Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. I have a really packed show for you today. As you know, every single day there's some major news articles happening. So I'm going to give you a roundup of my thoughts, a bit of rant and a rave. And without wasting any more time, let's start the show. So I'm going to start the show with our favorite foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock. And she recently came on the Munich Security Conference and she said that you cannot be neutral as a country. You are either with the West or you are against the West. I think she's pretending to be George Bush back in the day when he said you're either with us or against us in his famous speech. And there weren't many famous speeches back in the day. So I'm going to show you the actual thing, what she said. It's a bit of a laugh, so let's hear from her.
Neutrality is not an option, because then you are standing on the side of the aggressor. And this is a plea we are also giving next week to the world again. Please take a side for peace, a side for Ukraine, a side for the humanitarian international law, and these times this means also delivering ammunition so Ukraine can defend herself.
So let's break this down for a second. So I can't believe she's the leader of the Green Party. I mean, these Green parties, they're proper warmongers, aren't they? So she said, you cannot stand to be neutral. You have to take side. You can either take the side of peace, which is Ukraine, or you can take the side of Russia. And she's forgetting. It's so funny. And at the end of her little speech, she says, "Oh, we need to give ammunition to Ukraine so it can defend itself." Okay, so is that what you call peace? Giving country ammunition? So first of all, why is Russia gone into Ukraine in the first place? I mean, has she forgotten what Ukraine was doing to Donbass for 8 years or so? How many civilians that Ukraine killed? Has she forgotten about the neo-Nazi elements? Has she forgotten about the violent coup that happened in Ukraine? Is she forgetting about all the other anti-democratic policies that Ukraine is taking? So how is this peace? And this woman really has not got a clue whatsoever. Then you have Blinken agreeing with whatever she said, and he says, we need to basically go again, you're either with us, you basically have to be with us, that follow the rules-based order, or you have to basically be with Russia, which is a totalitarian country doing whatever he likes and taking over smaller countries and all of that nonsense. So has Blinken actually forgotten what US did to Afghanistan, to Iraq, to Libya, to Yugoslavia? The list goes on and on and on. This is like, the US has got a really bad, examples of its past. I mean, and this is even not a long past. This is a very recent past. I mean, Iraq and Afghanistan, it's just only a few years ago. And is it okay for the West to do whatever it wants and invade countries and bomb countries against international law and stuff? And why is it not okay for Russia to do the same thing to protect its citizens from Donbass? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So again, Miss Annalena Baerbock, well done. I salute you. She doesn't make it to the idea of the day today, by the way. That's someone else. Just wait for that by the end of the show. So you got she hasn't disappeared from the spotlight just yet. So talking about being neutral, Ursula says China has taken Russia's side. EU dismisses Beijing's misplaced plan for peace in Ukraine. So recently, as you know, China has come up with a plan for peace. Basically, the Ukrainians have rejected it. The EU have rejected it. So I mean, I don't understand what the hell their problem is. So Ursula has recently come on and she says China has taken Russian side, so they're not really neutral. They're basically taking Russian side. So this is why they've rejected the peace plan, because they think it basically suits Russia and not Ukraine. But China is trying to be as neutral as they can. They're not sending weapons to Russia, which even though Blinken is accusing them of doing so. The West has clearly taken Ukraine's side. They're pumping Ukraine full of money, pumping Ukraine full of weapons. The media, the politicians are all clapping at Zelensky every time he makes a speech. I mean, come on, if that isn't taking sides, then what is? So China is not doing anything like that for Russia. So the fact that she's sitting there saying that China has taken Russian side is completely misguided. So I'm going to move something closer to home. In UK, we're having a huge food crisis. There's no fruits and vegetables in supermarkets. So some people are blaming Brexit, other people are blaming the Russian-Ukrainian war. They've basically run out of things to blame. Some people are blaming the supply chains. But this has been happening for the past year or so, and there was going to be a food crisis because, as you know, a lot of Western countries didn't get hold of fertilizer, and you need fertilizer to be able to grow fruits and vegetables, right? So a lot of Western countries didn't have that supply from Russia, from Ukraine because of the war. Plus also supply chain issues. Plus you can blame Brexit as well. Plus you can, blame Boris and whoever was in charge at the time. So it's a list of all of these things. But the thing is, it's not going to help the situation. The fact is, when you go out to the supermarkets, there's no fruits and vegetables. And UK has never ever had anything like this in its history. UK has always been classed as a rich country. It's never struggled when it came to food and stuff like that. It's only the poorer countries who struggle to have that kind of food. So this reality has really hit home, and people are panicking in UK. And as you know, there's strikes happening everywhere. UK's economy is doing really bad as well, and it's getting really bad, guys. And I'm going to make a special video probably in the next few days, the steps that the UK is taking, really, really bad steps, which could mean that a lot of people leave the UK because it's getting really, really bad at this moment. And I'm going to leave that video and I'll talk about it a bit more when I get there. So I saw this article as well. It's not unicorns driving the UK economy, it's side hustles. So basically what they're saying, recent research on so-called necessity entrepreneurs in the UK has shown that around 50% of under 35s now have side hustles, written by Professor Stephen Taylor. So what this article is saying, UK's economy is being driven by under 35-year-olds who are not just working but also having side hustles as well. So let me tell you something. This is the same problem that's plaguing the United States and the Western world as well. People are forced to have second jobs. People are forced to have side hustles. Trust me, for instance, I would prefer to work 9 to 5 and have the rest of the day off and enjoy my time with my missus, go out and do stuff, go for dinner, go for walks. I don't want to be doing side hustles. I don't want to be working second jobs. I mean, what is the point? This is the situation now in UK where people are forced, let me say this again, forced to work second jobs, forced to work on side hustles. And this is what's kind of helping the economy as well. But it's not about helping the economy. It's about these people who are struggling to pay the bills, struggling to pay their grocery shopping, struggling to pay for basic necessities, so they're having to work second jobs. And this happened in the US as well. Recently, a US jobless unemployment report came in, and it shows that basically more people are working in the US. However, if you look closely at that report, it's not per individual, it's per job. And more basically people are forced to work 2 or even 3 jobs in the US just to make ends meet, because people are working paycheck to paycheck. And trust me, people would rather not do this. I mean, if you look at, 20, 30 years ago, where people, a family where the husband can just go out to work and he'd make enough for the family. The wife wouldn't have to go out, and she can, stay at home and, do other stuff as well. And he would make enough for both of them. But now the husband is forced to go out. The wife is forced to go out. Look, we are living in a new generation where women obviously have that freedom. They can go out and do whatever they want. But trust me, sometimes, a woman doesn't want to be working like a slave all the time. Sometimes she needs time to, go to do her nails, go to do her hair. She wants to go to the salon. She wants to do, woman things. They need time for that. And when you're like working like 9 to 5, 2, 3 jobs, you're not going to have time as a woman to look after yourself and have time for yourself, or time for your kids. Trust me, women want to have that choice, whether they want to work or whether they don't want to work. They want to have that choice. Apologies for my sniffle. I got a bit of a cold today, so bear with me, guys. So where was I? So just the role of women has changed over the last 20, 30 years. Nowadays, a woman is expected to work just as hard, if not harder than a man, to make ends meet. And every woman I speak to, trust me, they do not want that responsibility. They still want the man to be the main breadwinner in the house. The woman still eventually, she wants to kind of raise her kids and stuff like that, and plus have that freedom to go to work if she wants or not go to work. They still need time for themselves as well. There's a lot of things that women need to do. There's a lot of things they need to organize. They haven't got time to work 2 or 3 jobs. The society is basically forcing them to basically get out of the house, and it's really affecting society right now. And this is why a lot of women, they cannot afford to have kids, or they don't have time to have kids because they're too busy out working. And the society has changed a lot, and it's just getting worse. And you just have to look at Japan, South Korea as an example. And it's happening all over the West as well. So things have changed over the last 20 years. Some would say for the better, but some would say for the worse. I'll let you guys decide on that. So guess who's back? Yes, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, they're both back, and they're both chatting shit again as usual. So they're basically telling Rishi Sunak to send fighter jets to Ukraine. I mean, come on. Liz Truss was disgracefully sacked from the UK as Prime Minister, and Boris Johnson has been disgracefully kicked out as well. So the last person Rishi Sunak needs to listen to is these two dumb-witted fools. So I hope Rishi Sunak doesn't do what they say, but I'm sure he wants to, because Rishi Sunak is obviously, him and Liz Truss and Boris Johnson, they're all under the same coin. They're all under the same side and same page, as you would say, from the book. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Rishi Sunak does that, because they were one of the first countries to send tanks to Ukraine. Then they lobbied other countries to do the same. And I wouldn't be surprised if UK is the first to send fighter jets to Ukraine, and they lobby other countries to do the same as well. So they already agreed to send long-range missiles to Ukraine as well. So things are escalating on the British front. So let's go to United States. And United States, as you know, there's been an Ohio train derailment. But what the weird thing about this is a lot of thousands of animals have died in the toxic Ohio train derailment. But what the weird thing is, I don't see any American TV shows or any American TV channels or news articles covering this. Not even one. It's completely blinded them. And while Biden was in Ukraine, shaking hands with Zelensky, he should have been in Ohio, talking to the people of Ohio, saying America has your back. We're going to, put this area as national, it's going to be a national security issue. We're going to, make sure everybody is looked after. We're going to make sure this mess is cleaned up. We'll make sure everybody is well, given money and to be able to move to another place and things like that. He should be looking after what's important at home in the United States, but he's not even doing that. He's flying off all the way to Ukraine, agreeing to send more money to Ukraine, meeting his friend Zelensky. So it's an absolute joke, guys. I mean, I don't know if I have any many American listeners in this show, but I want to know what you guys think. He's completely forgetting about the problems at home, and he's just completely focusing everything on Ukraine. And I've also read up on why there's been such a media blackout on Ohio. And there's been such a media blackout because apparently the same people who own a lot of the stuff in the Ohio train, a lot of the chemicals, a lot of the certain things are owned by certain companies, and these companies also control the media as well. And there's other YouTube channels actually describing this in more detail. I'm not going to go into every single details, but there's media companies, defense companies, pharmaceutical companies, and they've all got major stakes in American media. And this is why American media is really controlled. They don't really have any independence. They can't really report on whichever story they want, because they report on the wrong story and they're out, they're fired, or they get court-martialed, or they get put in jail, or they get ridiculed. So you're basically a little sheep being told what to write, what to do, what to say, and it's a joke. Media and journalism has become a joke in most American TV channels. There's only a few independent people left, like obviously Seymour Hersh as well with his recent Nord Stream revelation. But the rest of the media is an absolute joke, guys. So one of the reasons these derailment stuff has happened is because of the lack of infrastructure, and apparently the train was going through miles and miles of tracks on fire, and nobody noticed, and there was only like 2 or 3 staff members in a train which was going for miles. And there was no infrastructure done on the tracks. There wasn't any repairs done, and there was no checking. And again, this shows the lack of infrastructure that's going into United States, and all the money is going into military industrial complexes and money going to Ukraine. But they're forgetting on what's important. America was built on railroads, back in the day. America is such a great country because they built their country through the railroads from east to west and north to south, and this is why America has become great. And they're forgetting their core fundamentals, making sure they have these tracks maintained, investing in things like high-speed rail links like China has. They're not doing any of that. They're forgetting what's made America great, and they're just focusing on the military-industrial complex and focusing on giving money to Ukraine. So it's an absolute joke, guys. So you can see here, Pentagon unveils a new major Ukraine aid package. So they're giving an extra $2 billion worth of weapons and drones. And not only this, you have the World Bank announcing another 2.5 million additional Ukraine aid. So that was announced yesterday. And total, we're talking about 4.5 billion in a matter of days in, obviously the war's anniversary and things like that. So altogether, I think they've already spent around 150 billion in Ukraine. The EU, UK has already probably sent around another 50 billion altogether. And plus loads of loans, plus don't forget money they've raised from ordinary people who have been giving money through charities and stuff to Ukraine. Let's say another 10-20 billion there. So we're talking about 200 to 250 billion that's gone into Ukraine over the past year or so. But if you look at Ukraine itself, they're not putting that money into Ukraine. They're not putting that money to help the Ukrainian people. It's all going into the military. It's all going into the pockets of Zelensky and his cronies. And they are just pocketing all of it. Some of it is being channeled back to the military-industrial complex. Some of it is channeled back to certain senators and certain people in obviously the defense contracts as well. So it's all become a money laundering exercise, and it's just not going to stop, guys. It's just becoming never-ending pit at the moment. So this is happening while the US inflation continues to rise. The US inflation has been kept low over the past 6 months or so, but this is because China has been in lockdowns. If people who have got a very short memory will realize China has been in a severe lockdown. They have been closed for 3 years. Their borders have been closed. They have been locked down for 6 months to a year, and their industry has been in a very severe slowdown. And this is the reason why oil prices were kept low, because the demand in China was very low, so the oil prices were kept low. And because oil prices were kept low, everything else, the inflation has been going down a very small amount. However, things have changed now. China's economy is starting to grow, gain pace. Oil prices are starting to go up. Factories in China are starting to open up again, and they are starting to, deliver items all over the world. Oil prices and gas prices have been obviously high, and material costs are going high. So obviously these costs are rising. US is still, fighting with, the Fed is still fighting with money printing, and also the dollar is very, very strong at the moment. Because the dollar is very strong, things like oil and other commodities are very, very expensive. If you're Sri Lanka, for example, your currency is going to be very, very weak compared to the dollar. So if you want to buy oil and gas and other commodities, you're going to have to pay over the odds to get that oil, because the dollar is so high at the moment. And recently the dollar has become very, very high. Yesterday the S&P 500 absolutely got hammered. The gold prices got hammered, oil, everything got hammered in the stock exchange. And this is because of the high US dollar. And the high US dollar is causing mayhem in the markets at the moment. And it's going to get even higher because the Fed has increased interest rates in February, and they're looking for another interest rate hike in March the 3rd, I believe. And this is going to make the dollar even stronger. And it's going to cause absolute mayhem around the world. It's going to probably destroy the world's economy if this carries on. The dollar is getting too strong for its boots. The countries who import rather than export are going to suffer more. Countries like Turkey, for example, Sri Lanka, who are heavily dependent on imports, they're going to have to pay more for the imports because the dollar is getting stronger and stronger. And the Fed interest rate hikes are absolutely destroying the world. Countries like China, who are an export nation more than an import nation, sometimes it works with them, sometimes it works against them, because what the strong dollar does, it weakens your own currency, but this makes China's exports cheaper. So China can export more goods cheaper because the dollar is more expensive. So more countries will be buying from China compared to buying from the US, because the dollar is so expensive. US exports are going to be very, very expensive. So people are more likely to buy goods from China rather than USA. So this is going to obviously affect US economy as well. So this is why when the dollar gets stronger, the S&P 500 gets hammered, because companies make less money because people are buying less goods from the US because of the hike. However, China still needs the dollar. They still need the dollar to buy oil, gas, commodities. And they also need the dollar to kind of weaken their own currency as well, because because of the weak currency, they can offer cheap exports. China, with that money that they're buying, they are buying US bonds and treasuries as well. They have no choice because they have a huge kind of deficit with the United States. The United States has a deficit with China, in terms of trade, I believe is around 1 trillion. So they can't really do much with that money except buying, American farmlands, buying American stocks or treasuries. But mainly China is buying treasuries, but they're also dumping a lot of debts as well, dumping a lot of dollars at the same time. But they still need to have those dollars to kind of shore up their own currency as well, and they also need it to buy petrodollar and other goods. Saudi Arabia still have not agreed to sell China oil in yuan yet. Iraq has done so, and you can see this comes to the next slide. Iraq opts for yuan settlements in trade with China. So Iraq will start, selling or trading goods with yuan, and that could involve petrol as well as gas and things like that. Saudi Arabia still hasn't done so, even though they said that they would. But the reason they haven't done so is because they're not sure how USA would react. USA still has a lot of troops in Saudi Arabia. USA still provides that security to Saudi Arabia, and I believe if Saudi Arabia does something like that, the US might do something very similar to what they did to Saddam, what they did to Gaddafi in Libya. So Saudi Arabia is being very, very cautious. Unless they have a security guarantee from China and Russia, I don't think Saudi Arabia will settle for yuan just yet. But this could be something they could do in the future. However, Middle Eastern countries like Iraq are now going ahead doing yuan settlements with China, and this is making United States really angry, because obviously United States has spent trillions invading Iraq and what have you not over the years, and now Iraq is basically having the balls to settle with China in yuan, and obviously US is not very happy about that at all. So let's talk about the upcoming G20 meeting in India. India are the current hosts for the upcoming G20 meeting. And India has already outlined what they're going to talk about in the G20. And they said talking about Ukraine is going to be a very small thing. And obviously the West wants to completely take over the G20 like they did when it was in Indonesia. When the meeting was held in Indonesia, the G7 members completely ransacked it. They wanted to talk about Ukraine, they wanted to talk about Russia. They were having their own secret meetings with the G7. They didn't even invite any of the other G20 members. So they basically had their own kind of strategy going into the G20. So let me tell you why the G20 was formed. The G20 was formed because the G7, who were the original so-called Gangster 7, they were basically raising money to solve a lot of problems around the world. And they realized that they just don't have enough money to kind of do all this stuff. So what they thought they do, they expanded to the G20, and they basically expanded it so they can have a bit of money from China, they can have a bit of money from India, Indonesia, and other major countries in the G20 to basically promote their agendas around the world. So when the G7, obviously they're not the richest countries in the world anymore, they basically needed that money. They decided to rope in the other G20 members, except they wanted to keep their own agendas. They wanted to still control the rest of the G20 members. And the last G20 meeting just completely showed what the G7 is all about. they still wanted to have that sort of control and do whatever the hell they want. And only thing they wanted with the rest of the G20 members is to go along with it and to give them that money as well to basically promote their own agendas. So this is what the G20 is all about. So India's basically put the foot down and said, we're not going to talk much about Ukraine or Russia. We have other important world events happening and we're going to be focusing on that. And also, they're not going to mention the word war as well. Russia and China basically said they object to the description of the word war. They're going to be using crisis instead. So obviously, India has seen what's happened in the G20, and they're going to put their foot down and they're going to try and control these G7 Gangster 7 members, making sure that they follow the agenda that's put on the table and not basically go on a tangent and have their secret meetings and whatever not. I mean, the last G7 was an absolute joke fest. You have Rishi Sunak and the Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau going around drinking. They were wearing their famous shirts, matching shirts, and they're with Klaus Schwab and wearing the famous matching shirts as well. Rishi Sunak was running around having secret meetings with all members, and he was supposed to have a meeting with President Xi, and instead he there was a bomb that exploded in Poland, and it was a Ukrainian bomb, and Rishi Sunak cancelled his meeting with President Xi so he can have a round-to-round meeting with all the NATO members, secret members, and he was running around like headless chickens saying what to do, what shall we do, there's a bomb that went off in Poland, what shall we do, shall we kick off Article 7, NATO Article 5, whatever, I don't know what to do, let's they're calling each other, wasting so much time, and Rishi Sunak basically cancelled a meeting with President Xi so he can have these ridiculous NATO meetings about this silly bomb going off in Poland. I mean, think about this another way. If Rishi Sunak had a meeting happening with President Biden, for example, and this bomb went off in Poland, do you think he's going to cancel that meeting with Biden? Of course not. He's not going to do that. So it's just become a joke. These guys have become an absolute joke. So China is very furious with the US because the US basically accusing them of helping Russia, giving, missiles and stuff like that, weapons to Russia. And basically China has told the US that it's in no position to tell China what to do. So this is a real big statement, because when you have a real bully in your school classroom and the bully basically bullies everyone, and there's one particular kid, a Chinese kid in your class, and the bully tries his best to bully that Chinese kid, and the Chinese kid stands up and he says, he shows a few kung fu moves and he says, you know what, you're in no position to tell me what to do. And the Chinese guy looks at the bully right in his eye, daring him to make the next move, and the bully basically backs away. Because let me tell you something about bullies. Bullies are only powerful if you give them that power. They will only bully you if you let them bully you. If you stand up to a bully, the bully's not gonna, bully you anymore, because bullies just get off on basically making other lives difficult. Because it gives them that ego boost, it gives them the power over fear. People are scared of them, and people, have that, people do whatever the bully tells them to. So he's got that power over people, but that comes from fear. But when you have someone that doesn't fear you, the bully doesn't know what to do, because end of the day, the bully wants an easy life, right? He has an ego. So imagine if one kid beats up the bully in front of the whole classroom, his ego is going to be shattered. So he's gonna he's gonna basically try and avoid his ass getting kicked, because his whole narrative is based on making people scared, showing people that he's strong, showing people that he's got that power. But when one person stand up against you, you don't want to be shown up to the rest of the class, showing that, you know what, you're actually not that scary. You know, you're actually a wimp. You're just basically pretending to be strong just to put your power and make people scared about you. So this is what China's doing. China's basically standing up to the US and say, you know what, you're not in any position to tell us what to do. And the US is basically freaking out because US is not used to countries telling them this over the years. They are not used to countries standing up and basically standing up to US's face. And so only in the past few countries have been doing that, like North Korea, like Iran, for example, Venezuela. But now, more countries are standing up. China's standing up. Many other countries in Africa and Asia, Middle East are standing up, and even India is standing up to the US as well, and this is causing a lot of stirs in United States, and they're absolutely freaking out that all of these countries are now standing up to them. They just don't have that aura, that power anymore that they did 20 or 30 years ago. So Zelensky wants the meeting with President Xi, basically, but as you know, Zelensky has been urging for a meeting for over a year with President Xi, but I can tell you something, it's not going to happen, because President Xi and China, they know, first of all, he's a puppet. There is no point meeting this puppet because nothing's going to come out of it, because whatever they say to Zelensky, end of the day, Zelensky is always going to go back to the US and say, please, sir, what should I do next, sir? What should I do, sir? The only reason he wants to meet President Xi is basically he wants to tell him off. He wants to tell him, oh, you got to stop being friends with Russia, blah, blah, blah. But don't forget, this guy is, basically showed his true colors to China. At the time, before the war, there was an incident with a company called Motor-Sich. Motor-Sich was basically Chinese owned. And the US basically told Zelensky, you need to get rid of this Chinese investment because they are stealing technology. They are learning how to produce airline jets from Motor-Sich and stuff. We cannot give them that technology. So what did Zelensky do? He kicked out every single Chinese investment from Motor-Sich and he nationalized Motor-Sich. And guess what happened after the war? So as soon as the war started, most Motor-Sich factories were bombed by Russia because at the end of the day, they weren't Chinese owned anymore. So Russia could do whatever the hell they want. So first thing Russia did was blow up those Motor-Sich factories. So obviously, it didn't really work out, did it, for Zelensky? So when it comes to China, Zelensky will only do what his masters tell him, and this is why China do not trust him. China have got no reason to meet him, and that's why China has not met him so far, because they know meeting this puppet is no use, really. You got to meet the puppeteer, not the actual puppet. So I want to talk a bit about Elon Musk. And Elon Musk has been causing a few stirs lately. First of all, he's been accusing Victoria Nuland as the most pro-war voice in Washington. So he's been accusing the top official of pushing war in Ukraine. And also he's been cutting off Starlink. So Ukrainian military has been using Starlink for obviously their missiles and other things, internet as well, and also ways to communicate. And Russia has been obviously blowing up all the infrastructure, internet and stuff like that. But a lot of the Ukrainian army has been using Starlink. And Elon Musk has been paying for that. But recently, he's decided to cut off the Starlink. And it's for many reasons. Number one, Russia has been increasingly using cyber attacks on his Starlink satellites, rendering them useless. And he's scared that if Russia and China basically do the same thing and render his Starlink satellites useless, then all of that money will be going to waste, because all that his satellites will be absolutely useless. They're all in space, and they all get hacked and cyber attacked, and that's it. And also he wants to avoid his Starlink company being part of the military, because don't forget, he's got obviously a huge stake in Tesla in China. And China are watching what he's doing. So they will never ever allow Starlink to go over China, because they've seen what Elon Musk has done with Ukraine, and they feel that he might do the same thing with Taiwan. So China will never allow Starlink across China, and also Russia will never do it. But also the rest of the world is watching as well, and they will not allow Starlink satellites over their country, because they've seen what Elon Musk has done with Ukraine, but not only Ukraine, but also in Iran as well. When Iran tried to shut down the internet due to the protests, Elon Musk basically offered Iranian protesters Starlink as well. So you can see things like Starlink can be used in the wrong way, for protests or for military uses. And now it's coming back to haunt him, because Russia is taking out these satellites using cyber attacks, and it's costing Elon Musk a lot of money. So he's decided not to pursue this path anymore, because at the end of the day he's realized he's not winning. There's nothing to be gained from this. So now he's taken a completely different step, and now he's speaking out against the government, speaking out against Nuland, Blinken, and even Biden as well. And he's, certain statements he's making right now, he's actually talking about pro-Russian things rather than just pro-Ukraine. So Blinken has said he has talks with Elon Musk on the use of Starlink satellites internet in Ukraine, and I believe those talks those talks are basically, you got to provide those Starlink stuff in Ukraine or else, and probably Blinken threatened him and stuff. So, but Elon Musk is not going to take all this crap from the government, and you've seen his, especially with his stuff that he's released about in Twitter. So he's not really taking much notice of it. But we'll see what happens in the future. But it's very, very interesting how Elon Musk has suddenly changed his course. So you can see from Crimea, the bridge which was blown up as part of the terrorist attack is basically been repaired and is now fully operational. So all that work that Ukraine has done has become useless, and all that money they've spent, all that military planning they've done to blow it up, it hasn't really done anything. It's actually pushed Russia to be more aggressive in Ukraine. Ukraine cannot say the same for its infrastructure. Russia is basically blowing up infrastructure every single day with missiles and bombings and what have you not. Ukraine is not able to repair things fast enough. And Zelensky has recently come on record to say he's going to attack Crimea again. And so let's see what he does. He has his handful in Bakhmut anyway. So not sure what's happening there. There's also talk about him attacking Transnistria. Sorry, I can't pronounce the name, but it's that little strip of land next to Moldova, and he's got his troops surrounding that place as well. So it could be some interesting developments happening over the next few days, but we'll see what happens. So Putin has said that, he's basically hinted that the fact that more weapons that are going to Ukraine, more long-range weapons that the US gives, the more Russia will have to push back Ukraine. So this means they will have to go further out into Odessa, further, blocking Ukraine from the sea. They will have obviously take more of the eastern side of Ukraine as well, Kharkiv region, and they'll go further in along the river that crosses Ukraine through the middle. I think it's called the Dnipro River or something. I can't remember the exact name. So that could still happen. That could still be on the cards. Or they can go as far as the Polish border. Recently, Medvedev has said we might have to take parts of Poland as well. But obviously, he's probably just trolling NATO, probably trolling Poland. I don't think Russia would go into Polish borders at all, but they might go as far as the border because they want to stop weapons being delivered to Ukraine. So they might do that, and they might just leave half of Ukraine in the middle, and that could be some sort of rump state, and that could even be split in half as well, but I can see Russia taking the rest of it. So we'll see what happens and how it develops over the next year or so. So we're coming to the idiot of the day today, and the idiot of the day has to be this guy, and I want to show you basically what he says, and I just found it absolutely hilarious. So listen to this.
Director of the Terror Asymmetrics Project. He is fighting with the International Legion of Territorial Defense of Ukraine. And Malcolm, we just watched that video of you, and Ali Arouzi was attempting to interview you for us to get more information on what you're doing. We saw those cruise missiles fly overhead. So explain to us why you are there and what you are doing.
Well, as you know, I spent quite a bit of time here in the pre-war period. And when the invasion happened, I had friends who were in Donetsk, who were in the Ukrainian army, who were writing to us and telling us, we're not going to survive tonight. We've been hit 500 times. These are graduates at Defense Language Institute. These are my friends. And, as the more I saw of the war going on, the more I thought, I'm done talking. All right, it's time to take action here. So about a month ago, I joined the international.
So there you have it, guys. He's done talking, and so he's decided to join the volunteer army in Ukraine. And there's another clip of him somewhere that he's in leave, and there's cruise missiles flying on top of him. But it's funny how people in United States, some people anyway, are still brainwashed by it all. And he's talking about his friends fighting in Donbass, and that's why he wants to go and join them. But doesn't even know what Ukraine was doing in Donbass. Doesn't even know how many civilians they killed in Donbass. I mean, and the kind of war they were having with the people of Donbass and the Russian-speaking people, doesn't even know anything about that. So he thinks Ukraine has gone into Donbass, and they're the ones that are the victims. I mean, come on. If you go into someone's house and they shoot you, are you going to tell the police you're the victim? You broke into their house, you're the victim, right? I mean, come on. So this guy, basically, he's done talking, and that's why he's joined the volunteer army. So let's see how long he lasts, shall we? So that's all for today, guys. Thanks all for listening, and I hope to see you in the next video. So take care for now, and I'll see you soon.